You're listening to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Two fans, two generations, all things Star Wars begins now.
All right. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to Head, a Star Wars podcast. I'm Eric Vansel.
I'm Daryl Sanders.
And we're your hosts for this show that is not usually live on a Sunday night. But unfortunately, as much as we tried to make it happen, we really couldn't do it Friday. But we didn't want to wait until next week because every Friday, as you guys know, we're reviewing The Bad Batch Season 3. And unfortunately, if you even skip a week, now you got to try to maybe do two at once. And we didn't want to do that. So a lot of you guys watch on demand anyway. But hey, for those of you who are able to join us live on this Sunday night, we're happy to have you. All right. So with that said, this is like 4 episodes deep into it now. Now, we said there was 15 episodes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're almost a third of the way into this thing. And I mean, just spoiler alert, I thought that this was another really good episode that is keeping up with the quality of the show. And, there's a lot that we can talk about in this, which, of course, I'm sure we're going to.
Once again, Bad Batch series, the season. And so, we're trying to bring all this stuff tools. And yeah, we got some pretty so first release already one, and now we're just like the single episode now. We're starting to get a little bit of the meat of the. So yeah, it leaves something for us to talk about.
Yeah, and I mean, again, that's a good point, actually, because the original episode was like a 3 episode, they just dropped it on us at once. Now we can actually just spend the show, get into 1 episode, and then, just really dial into it, basically, which I think, of course, is more preferable. I don't know. I mean, I don't mind it when they drop 3 episodes of the first run, because obviously they need that much in order to get you into the story. I mean, if they had just dropped the first episode, that really wouldn't have given us enough context, right? But dropping the 3 really gave us the context. Now, the issue, though, is that when you do that, you have all this information that you have to try to absorb. So I'm kind of glad that we're back to, okay, now let's just review that 1 episode. So, yeah, with that, man, I mean, it opens with that whole crash landing scene, which one of the things that struck me with that, first of all, it was nice to see them once again opening up with a really cool action-packed scene. But one of the things that I wanted to note here is that you see the difference between, once again, the way that Omega's thinking and the way that Crosshair is thinking. That was something that jumped out at me. I don't know. What was because again, it's a priority thing, right? It's instantly showing the priorities between these two. And I thought that was something that I took away from it, obviously, other than it just being a really cool way to open a show.
Yeah, I mean, Crosshair is all about the business. He's all about execution, getting the job done. He's very single-minded. He's very just like, okay, I'm not getting my emotions caught up in all this other crap. He's just like, whatever I got to do to get the job done, that's what's going to do. And, he's very driven and focused on that. Whereas Omega is very, free thinking. She's very emotional on a lot of different things. She kind of goes with her gut more so than what her mind is just basically telling her to do.
Mm-hmm. And that's one of the things that I enjoy. And of course, we see that through this whole episode, and what's the Badger or something like that? What's his name?
Belcher.
Something like
that. I think it's Beecher, not Beecher. It's Belcher. Yeah, Belcher.
Oh yeah, right. Right, because they actually found them in an episode from season 2, right? Wasn't that how it went?
Well, Belcher, yeah, kind of found them as they were, in the jungle, the wooded areas, and came to their rescue.
Yeah,
while
right.
they were being, chased by the stormtroopers or whatnot.
Okay,
And
so that
you
was
know,
actually, I thought that was something that was introduced in season 2. I mean, I know about the whole season 3 thing where it helped, but it seemed like they had a previous relationship or something.
well,
That
yeah, I mean, remember that. Well, Belch, the as Crosshair calls him, the Hound. you know, I always love Crosshair's voice too. It's very like very. He reminds me very much of Jason Statham.
Mhm.
Like if they got somebody to play him, it would have to be like Jason Statham.
Yeah, actually that's a
Um,
good, and that's something that we might want to do as another, like maybe a Monday episode or something, is like who should play a live action version of the Bad Batch. But I
oh
would
yeah,
I would hang with the Jason Statham thing. I'd be all about that actually.
yeah. I mean, they're basically almost kind of like the Expendables in a way. I mean,
I
that's kind of
right.
who the Bad Batch. I mean, that's basically them.
I mean, a
Uh,
younger Stallone could easily play Hunter. He's practically
yep,
Rambo.
exactly. He's got
You
the
know, it's
headband
a
and everything, and I
headband.
think
Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
you know, um,
I spilled tea on myself. I hate when I do this. Well, wait, but I thought so.
um,
Belcher
yeah.
wasn't. So he was, because obviously I know that because in episode, was that 1, when she discovered that he was in the same compound, she was taking care of
Mhm.
all the animals or whatever. It seemed like there was a previous knowledge of it, but again, because we reviewed the first like 9 episodes or something of season 2, and then for some reason I think like another show came out or whatever, and we started doing a different review.
Mhm.
And I just remember, okay, you ended up going through and just watching the rest of the episodes. I didn't do that until like a week ago. So,
Now, yeah, Belcher is a new character, completely new this season.
really?
Yeah, Belcher is basically just, as part of her duties, she was kind of like, all right, you got to take care of these animals. And she kind of saw, like, okay,
Just all
can
right.
you?
I mean, I don't know. It just seemed like it was like, "Oh no, you're here too," kind of thing. I mean, that was the vibe I got. But then again, I mean, it seems like I would have remembered that. I mean, just going back in my head on the previous
Mhm.
seasons, yeah, I don't remember anything like that. So, all right,
No.
I'm just a
Yeah,
little
that's
high. That's cool. Whatever. I'm seeing things. It's not, it's not exactly out of the question.
yeah, no, I mean, yeah, Belcher is pretty much like, her little playmate or friend that she kind of made, but
But she
during
made
the
it in
whole,
episode 1 on season 3 is what you're saying.
yeah,
I just want to firmly establish that. Because again,
yes.
these are the kinds of things, because you know how it is. I mean, they'll always carry these characters over, and sometimes you don't see them for a while. Like sometimes they'll establish some character that you might see, I don't know, in the second episode of a season, and then it's like 2 seasons later they bring them back, like they reference that relationship, and you're like, sometimes you remember, sometimes you don't. So,
Yeah,
all
no, this
right.
is
I mean, I
this is
can
one of
handle.
those moments.
Yeah, I can handle being wrong about this. This is like, this is just a
Yeah.
typical. I've gotten older, and
We've got a lot of stuff going on and running
we've got
around
a
our
lot of
heads, man.
stuff going on, man. I mean, look, and you too. Star Wars
Yeah.
characters are probably the least thing that we're gonna try to keep track of. Although we probably should, since we are hosting a show. But still, it's good then that this is a newer character, because that actually makes this whole point even more strong in a sense, because you can understand, like eventually when he gets captured later on, which of course we'll address, but she's like, no, I'm going after him, and of course Crosshair's
Yeah.
like, what are you doing? We're going to get out of here kind of
Yeah.
thing. And it's that, once again, it starts in this whole scene here where they crash land and they have different objectives. But you see this is almost a continuing theme throughout this episode, actually, is that Crosshair's more about, this is what we need to do. Let's just get it done. And I'm not going to let anything get in the way. I mean, he's even be like, look, I'll leave you if necessary, right? But
Yep. Yeah.
she's
Basically.
all about like, no, we can't leave him behind. He helped us escape. that whole thing. And you're seeing these two different points of view, I guess would be the best way to put it, and
Yeah.
how they interact. And then, of course, eventually how Crosshair starts to slowly. I like the fact that they're obviously redeeming him, but they're not doing it quick. Because that's the one thing we talked about this with the Rise of Skywalker thing. It's like, she puts her hand on Kylo and all of a sudden he's good. It's like, whoa, hold on a minute. This guy was like a psycho like 3 scenes ago. That's a little bit. I ultimately like Kylo's redemption, which I didn't think I would, but I did. But I have to admit, put a turn signal on or something before you do that, because that was abrupt. This, though, is different.
Yeah, well, I think the whole point that they're trying to showcase in this, at the least on the onset of this, is the difference in really almost, I don't want to say like ideologies, but maybe that might be the word.
Yeah, I agree with you.
It's more so that Omega is very loyal where Crosshair isn't, and that's what they're really juxtaposing.
Yes,
It's just showing you like how she's all about like, okay, I'm willing to sacrifice whatever to be loyal to people who have been friends to me, who've helped me, who's done all this stuff for me, or it means something to me. I'm going to go to the ends of the earth for them. Crosshair isn't like that. Obviously not, because he left his brothers to, pretty much join up with the Empire. So that's really the common thread that we're seeing. And it's like, all right, how is Crosshair learning to become unselfish and to gain his loyalty back to to at least a person, let alone a group that's outside of the Empire. So and it's funny because we saw Crosshair, like he was so devoted to the Empire, like, hey, you guys are your own thing. I won't bother you if you don't bother us, but if you come near the Empire, if you come across me, I will do something about it. And then Crosshair started to see the atrocities of the Empire firsthand for himself, and he started to kind of look at things and say, maybe I'm not exactly fighting for the right thing, because I'm seeing things happen that I don't. He started not to agree with some of the things that he's seen that the Empire has done, but he hasn't completely transformed his thought process yet. And I think that's where we are in his growth and development, where Omega is kind of like, she's trying to be that beacon of light to try to lead him back to like, hey, remember, you used to be like us. You used to be with us. What happened to you? That type of thing. And so that's where we are. And that's what, and she's showcasing that, we're seeing that, play out with Betcher, is because, Betcher is this hound that she's like, okay, basically a dog. And Crosshair's like, okay, look, we're stuck on this planet. Like, we got to get out of here. We're wanted by the Empire. Like, Hemlock has got, they really don't know it yet, but like Hemlock's got this massive search out for you, and you're trying to run around trying to save some stupid dog. Like, we need to get the heck out of here. Like, what are you doing? And at this point, on one hand, you can kind of see Crosshair. It's not necessarily him not being loyal, but he's just kind of like, all right, the smart thing to do would be to get the heck out of here, because we know the Empire is coming. And because he worked for them, he knows how they are. Omega, on the other hand, is kind of like, I don't care about any of that. I'm not leaving. Like, if I get caught, I'm gonna get caught because I'm trying to save someone that I care about and someone who's been there for me. So, and she's willing to risk all of that. And Crosshair just is like, okay, this is stupid.
Yeah, well, there's a couple of things, because I think there's some things that factor into this. First of all, going back to the most recent thing that you were talking about, a lot of it has to do with Crosshair seeing the atrocities. Remember, and this is one of the things where I think the clones initially thought, because the Empire really was the Republic. It was just, basically the same people.
Yeah.
Different objectives, obviously, but they are the
Legitimate
correct
government.
government. Yeah, the legitimate, exact. Thank you. The legitimate government. And so essentially what it is that Crosshair's like, no, you guys are actually fighting for the wrong people. By going against this, he saw them almost as treasonous in a way. Now,
Hmm.
never mind that there was a whole Order 66 thing. That was the first thing. But, obviously Crosshair believed in the hype about the Jedi and how they were trying to take over or whatever. So Crosshair does have a loyalty for the government that essentially created him. That's the first
Hmm.
thing. The second
Right.
thing is, yeah, exactly. It's really more about, it's not even so much that I don't think that Crosshair, he does have a bit of a selfish thing going. That's absolutely true. But I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that he's loyal to the empire, not necessarily the people in the empire, more like the entity. And he's very objective based, right? So
Hmm.
he's more like you said, look, they don't, like you said, they don't realize it, but he knows, even though we as viewers have more information than he does because we're seeing the other scenes, he does know that, look, these guys are not just going to be like, oh, well, they got away. Better luck next
Hmm.
time. No, they're obviously going to search for them. And that's what Crosshair's objective. He's like, look, this is our objective. And he's looking at finding this creature versus getting out of there. It's like, look, this is a no-brainer. I mean, we
Right.
can't do this. So that's
Yeah.
one part of it. Whereas, like you said, Omega is more about loyalty, more about relationships, more about that. Like, she puts the people above the objective, above everything else. It's like, okay, even if the objective fails, I'm going to save this person. And it's more so, I think she might have let him go if it wasn't for the fact that he's the reason why they were able to get away in the first place, which of course she points out in the episode.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so she's like, yeah, I'm not going to just betray him all of a sudden because, you know, it's inconvenient to us. It's like, no, I mean, the only reason why we got away was because of the hound, essentially. So, why would I just let him just become a captive? And so,
Right, and
like, that
she knows
whole,
what that feels like too, because remember her background, right?
yep.
I mean, she was more or less imprisoned in a sense, and then
Hmm.
literally imprisoned, actually, just recently. So she can
Yeah.
see that. She's taking in a bigger picture than Crosshair. Crosshair, being a sniper, basically, he's very focused on a very
Hmm.
narrow target, and that's
Yep.
how I
There
think
you go.
it goes. Yeah.
Yeah. And then watching her, in her, quest. First, they're stuck on this planet and they're trying to, I found it hilarious that she was trying to sort of weasel her way past the guard. I mean, the attendant to get on that train. Like, well, trying to bribe him. I'm like, okay, well, you offer me a bribe, and it's like, well, yeah, if you're going for it, yes, that's exactly what I'm doing. They're like, oh, okay, well, this is how much the bribe is, and it's like an astronomical an amount of amount of money that's being asked. Um, and so now Crosshair is kind of like, he's trying to let her do it her way, but it's just kind of like you're still a kid. You're still kind of wet behind the ears and stupid. You don't really know how these things work. But he's kind of let her fail so she can see for herself.
Well,
So,
I think that's part of it, but I think the other part of it is, Crosshair obviously sees the growth in
hmm.
her skill and ability since he last dealt with her on a regular basis. And as he pointed out in the last episode, it's like, all right, I mean, you were the one that basically came up with a plan to get us out of here. So she actually succeeded in a way where he failed.
Yeah.
So I think he was willing to give her the benefit of the doubt. And of course, in that whole thing, that was one of the other things that I loved about the episode. I mean, there's like just speaking about Omega and Crosshair, which is basically what we've been talking about, right? There's the interplay between them and the chemistry between them is unexpectedly cool and funny.
Yeah.
Like, I could almost watch a series based on them. That's how I've been feeling since watching these last 2 episodes, and I didn't think that that would happen. And then, of course, when they're going after Belcher, it's like, all right, that was the only predictable part of this episode, where it's like, of course, somebody that the protagonist cares about gets captured, and it's like, I know that the stakes are high, but we got to go back for them. It's the same. But again, it did make sense in the context of this story, which is probably why it didn't ruin it.
Yeah, I mean, it's well, and it didn't start off that way because they were fine. They were trying to get on this train or whatever to get out of there. They
Hmm.
ran into the snag of not having the money, so now they have to try to come up with all the money to get out. And so they kind of come across this little gambling hole or whatever, and she gets the bright idea of like, well, hey, I'm pretty good at this stuff. I'll just go in here, win us some quick cash, and we'll be off. And so she goes in there and she's playing the game. She sees a guy that she feels like she could hustle from, and she ends up, kicking his butt and taking all his money. So she's like, all right, she's pretty much almost got enough cash. And then an Imperial comes in to play, and now it's, a situation. So then now this Imperial officer, they're having the card games, and Omega actually, beats him and takes all his cash, and he's like, all right, well, but then the Imperial has like, well, gambling is illegal here, so you do have to pay a fine. So then, so now he's kind of swindling her out of the money she just won and hoping to get his cash back. And in the process, while they're playing this game, they kidnap Betcher. And as they kidnap Betcher, she leaves and runs out, and it's like, oh crap, where's my little dog friend, or my little hound? And so now she keeps getting conned out of money by different people just to get information on where. And of course, Crosshair is watching this, getting more irritated, like, you're giving all our money away, like trying to find this stupid town that we don't even need right now. So I definitely can understand Crosshair's disposition and why he's so irritated, because he's like, look, we're here longer. We just escaped an Imperial officer who could very easily like imprisoned us again. And then once we were in the system, they were like, oh, you're the guys we've been looking for anyway. So they keep coming in very close. They keep kind of having these close encounters um, with the Empire. And it's kind of like, all right, we have to get out of here. And she keeps making all these choices where she's either giving away money or trying to chase after, you know, Betcher or whatnot. And so it's just becoming more frustrating for Crosshair, which I can completely understand, but it does make for good content. And yeah, Eric, I agree with you. Like, yeah, I could watch a series based on those two.
Well, and again, because, and this is where I should point out that one of the things that was interesting about this is the storyline was a very simple one. I mean, this is a
Hmm.
very straightforward, linear type of a story that
Yeah.
could have very easily been a filler episode if it was handled wrong. I mean, the writing, the direction, it was all pretty much flawless. I mean, the music was great. So, given that though, and all the stuff that you were pointing out about the way this episode was moving, was it showing that Omega's trying to do everything she can to rectify the situation and keeps in some ways making it worse
Hmm.
because she doesn't know when to quit. It's almost like a gambler, right? It's like, you were there,
Or like
and
when you
like
keep pulling on a loose string on a sweater, you
that's
keep thinking
yes,
like,
yes,
you
right,
just keep unraveling it even more. And it's like, okay, if you didn't
right.
stop bef-
Yeah, and that's a perfect analogy, actually. And the thing that's funny is, like you said, I mean, Crosshair keeps getting more and more frustrated because he knows what should be done. But there's a couple of things that I liked. I mean, the villain so far in this series has been pretty good, right? Because this is an Imperial captain that was basically introduced.
Hmm.
And I'm sitting there going, that guy was cool. He
Yeah.
was really usually a lot of times in a lot of the previous Star Wars series, you see almost these two-dimensional characters. I mean, they're not strictly two-dimensional, but they're not as interesting to where you can go, wow, I could almost see a series about this guy. But what I loved that they did with that whole card game, once she won it from the mark that she had, and then the captain sits down to play, and you knew that something was gonna. What I like about it is that you really feel like you're as a viewer, like you're the third person on this journey with them.
Yeah.
You don't feel like you're watching it. You feel like you're sort of with them, and
Hmm.
and you feel the tension because they did a really good job of having this be tense, and at the same time they didn't drag things on because usually something like that card game is something that a less experienced writer might have tried to drag on, maybe fill in some time, maybe do some stuff. I mean, it was enough to give you the suspense that was needed for the story, but it didn't drag on. And, you know, it was just one of those things that I thought that was cool. And of course, on the other side of this too, because we should mention, you did see a little bit of the whole now let's say Hemlock storyline. And what I was
Yeah.
gathering from that, because they didn't spend a whole lot of time on that actually. I was pleasantly surprised by that they kept the focus on Omega and Crosshair because that was a really cool, almost like video game quest like episode. That's really what it felt like to me. Like I was on
Hmm.
this quest because it was very much okay, you wanted cards. Now we got to find it out. Oh, well, now you got to pay this guy, like 10,000 credits or something. Do you do it or do you say no? And it's very much like that. Every action that you do is going to affect the outcome. And I like that. But from what we did see of the Nalise and Hemlock thing, it just gave even more of a sinister vibe to Hemlock. Like you really feel this guy is lethal. He's not just your normal, you know, Empire stooge or whatever that craves power or whatever. I mean, this guy, well, first of all, he has it. He has everything at his disposal from the Emperor himself. So, I mean, there's
Hmm.
that. But I just thought that was really, really interesting.
I love the way that Namaste actually, spun the whole thing because when he brought it up and he was like, well, it's amazing that like, as much as
Yeah.
you've drawn her blood, you know, it's never come back with this. And then all of a sudden when Dr. Carr does it, we get a positive match. Care to explain that? And I'm saying it's like, well, false positive. And so of course I kept thinking about COVID. We kept
Yep.
hearing that all the time.
That is exactly where my mind went too. And I would
Yeah.
not doubt that that's not where that came from, but that's,
Yeah, exactly. So I love that. And I was like, well, false positives happen. I mean, that's why I didn't really say anything because, for that very reason, it's like, okay, now all of a sudden it pops up. It's like, that's a little odd to me. But you know, um, so of course, Hemlock was trying to hint the fact, like, okay, well, if I find out
mm-hmm.
that him by being a doctor, he understands that. So he's like, okay, as a doctor and as a scientist, I do have to respect that answer. However, being nefarious, I have to kind of question it as well.
Well, here's the other
And
thing too that you
that's the
got to
part I
look
like.
at. Yes, absolutely. And this is where Nalise knows that she has an advantage because she's from Camino
Hmm.
and they're the clone experts.
All right.
So sure, you got Hemlock, you got Carr there, but it's like, hello, I'm the Caminoan. I'm the one. It's our race that invented this whole thing. So
Our
you
technology that
know
brought it forth. Yeah.
exactly. So everybody in the room, raise your hand if you're the cloning expert. It's kind of like she has the advantage that she can pretty much always think ahead of them and give plausible things because she's going to know how to mask things. And I'm sure even watching those other two episodes, look, I would be very surprised because she's just pitching these things, like not even bother testing them. She
Hmm.
must in the back of her mind have contingency plans in case that ever came to light. I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the cool thing. I mean, I love the writing as far as between the differences. Like, okay, you got the differences between I'm gonna say and Hemlock, and then you have Crosshair and Omega, and how they're kind of like their byplay with each other. It's very like a tennis match. It's very back and forth. And so I like that aspect of it because that's what makes like you said earlier about the tension brewing, because it's like, "Ooh, this person got one up on, oh, but they served it back." And oh, like you're just kind of like watching it like, okay, who's going to win? Who's going to get the match point on this? And so it's kind of like a verbal tennis match to me. So that I enjoy that aspect of this episode. Um, and then, going back to Omega and Crosshair, it's we get to the point, it's like, all right, Crosshair decides to leave Omega. He's like, screw it, I'm out of here. But then you see that moment where he's like, "Ugh, I can't leave her though," because
Yep.
it's like,
But
and
again,
then
see, that's a slow. That's what I
yeah, it's a
liked about
slow
it.
burn.
This is the
Yeah,
first time in Star Wars, I think. I guess you could count Anakin because it really did happen over, a series of films, obviously. But this is the first time that the whole redemption arc was slow and therefore realistic.
yeah, yeah. I mean, and just him having that conflict within himself is almost like watching uh Return of the Jedi, and Vader is like
Mm-hmm.
watching Luke get fried, and he's kind of looking at the Emperor. It's like, do I do it? Do I not? Do I do it? Do I not? And then he's like, screw it, and then he eventually, catches up with Omega. And so now they're, he's helping her find find Betcher or whatnot. And, they finally discovered like, okay, it's in this whole almost like shipping yard of like these weird exotic animals that they've all captured from all over the place. And so they use that to their advantage, of course. And as they end up, and of course, the captain knew that he was going to come looking for him.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was just like, okay, yep, I knew you were going to be here. So give me the rest of my money and maybe I'll just let you go. And, it's like when that's all that and now they have a choice, because it's like, all right, do I give them the money and not get off this planet that I need to get off of because the Empire's hunting me? Or do I give it to them you know, and save my little alien dog friend? So, there's the conundrum. And so of course, Omega throws the money at him, but then uh they had the bright idea to like release all these animals, all these exotic animals, and they actually got kind of really creepy and harrowing, because as they're going through all this, and the animals basically are attacked. It kind of reminds me this once again of the scene of
The
the
Rathtar
second
thing, yeah. Force
the Raptor
Awakens.
thing. But it also reminds me of the second Ace Ventura movie, when
Oh yeah.
when he calls all the animals and they attack that
Yeah.
one like taxidermist guy, and
Mm-hmm.
like they're all like chasing them all over the place, and that's what it kind of reminded me of. But when that one creature, we couldn't even see what it was, is just it just reached out like a tentacle and just snatched him in. I mean, that was creepy. So that reminded me a lot of the Raptor scene from, like you said, from Force Awakens.
Yeah, the whole thing did. I mean, what's really funny about that, first of all, I love the fact that when the captain surrounded them, because again, that was one of those things that you didn't really totally expect. Or even if you did, it could have gone either way. And then when it did, you felt the thing. And the thing that I loved, like I would probably have to say my favorite scene, you know, is when everything was failing and now Omega goes, "All right, do it your way." And he's like,
Yeah, he
"Finally." And
finally,
then
yes.
that was by far, like, I was almost
Yes.
standing up and cheering in my chair because the thing that was so great, and again, this is where the writing comes. I mean, first of all, the line was great, just
Mhm.
the way that,
Well placed.
yeah, where it's
Yep.
like, okay. But it was really, I thought, fascinating from a character standpoint with Crosshair, but also, again, the writing standpoint. I like the fact that even to the end, Crosshair is, you know what? I'm going to do this your way. And he's committed to that. I mean, not only does he go back and actually try to help her, because
Yeah.
originally he wasn't, but he's still, because she's still like, wait, don't do this. Let me, all right. And it's also the confidence because that in Crosshair's mind, he's thinking, okay, this is not going to end well. Eventually, she's going to realize that her way is not working. And Crosshair knows that he's good enough that no matter at which point he takes the leash off, he's going to be able to handle the problem.
Mm-hmm.
But it was just
Well,
that whole interaction,
yeah, no, because I think it was this episode when Crosshair utilized the line. It was just great. He said something like, my skills are being like you're wasting my skills for something like this. It's like I shouldn't be doing something this trivial and stupid.
Yeah.
Like
Well, that was when they
not
were in
just wasting my time.
Yeah, in the bar thing, right? Where because she's like, okay,
Yeah.
I'm gonna go play this, this game or whatever. He's just like, why? We can. This is. I mean, it was just so funny the way because that's true.
Yeah, because he wants to just basically go in and just like a bull in a china shop and just wreck shop, like take the money and let's get the heck out of here. And Omega is trying to implore some of the things that she's learned from Hunter and Tech, and
which in this case,
be a little bit more,
subtle
and sneaky about it.
Well, not only that, but if you think about it, and this is something that I noticed, I'm glad you brought that up because one of the things that I thought was, okay, Crosshair's way, while more expeditious, without a doubt, really this time Omega actually had the right idea because they were being hunted. They didn't want to really bring attention to themselves. And she was doing it a little bit more that Lando Han Solo way. She was trying to be a little sneakier and
blend in type thing.
Kind of, yeah, like subtle and God, what's the word? It's like a much better word, but I don't know.
Incognito or
yeah, I mean, exactly. It's all those things, right? Just pretty much just trying to be under the radar with these people. Because obviously, if you go and you shoot the place up, like what Crosshair wanted to do, you're going to bring attention to yourself, and then people are going to catch on. And, obviously they did anyway, because they pretty much found out. But when she finally let him off the leash, it was, it was done. And then I have to say, the captain's death was just so gruesome, man.
Yeah,
like, that was dark. I'm like, okay. I was not ready for that.
But I also love, the levity and the comedy in this because,
yes,
like when they first snatched those clothes, and he's like, Crosshair was just basically complaining about like, oh, this is stupid. Like, I hate wearing this, and like, look, you could be, like, look, just relax, dude. Like,
perhaps you'd like it better than yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Essentially,
it's kind of, it's a vibe I got.
Yeah, and just them, the bus like, oh yeah, I can beat him. Like, well, how are you gonna do this? And you don't even have any money. Like, we don't even have any money to gamble. How are you gonna gamble? She's like, well, he doesn't know that. So it's just Crosshair's like, okay. So the frustration once again building in Crosshair throughout this whole episode. So when she finally gets to the point, it's like, okay, we can do things your way now. When he says finally, you knew that he was releasing all his frustrations out on this, on everything.
Well, because and you felt them yourself. What made it
cool. Yep.
Because you were getting to the point.
If I was him, I would say the same thing. Like,
oh yeah,
high? Like,
yeah. But it was just so well. That exchange is just that was just so well delivered. I mean, it was satisfying. It's almost like as an audience member, you felt released. Like you felt you were being let off the leash. You basically were almost seeing it in a lot of ways through Crosshair's eyes because he was watching her much like we were. Yep. And so when it was finally a situation of like, yes, I can release this tension. It's going to be good. And yeah, I mean, and it just, of course it did attract the attention. But, they got away, which is fine. And again, even the escape scenes were refreshingly not cliche. I thought that was nice too, that it wasn't easy like what's been happening a lot. Yeah, or clean, exactly. So And then, of course, the ending with the moment we've all been waiting for, which
Yeah.
was basically Crosshair and Omega meeting up with Wrecker and Hunter. Yeah, that was just that was pretty cool. That
Well,
was a very emotional, powerful scene, honestly.
yeah, I mean, just the way Omega ran when she saw Wrecker, and she's
Yeah.
and the way they
Crying
were
and
just like,
stuff,
man,
and yeah, man. I mean,
yeah,
it was kind of unexpected, to be honest. I mean, I enjoyed it, don't get me wrong, but it was just kind of like, whoa, this is like I'm tearing up. Like I'm being affected by this once again. And a lot of it, I think, is because I didn't expect that kind of emotion at that moment.
right. And see, that's the type of emotion we wanted to see with Sabine
Yes.
and
Yes. Ezra.
Ezra. Yeah, I was about to say Aladdin. I was like, that's not his name.
Well, but I mean, let's be honest.
Yeah,
As
I
we
know.
said from day one, when we first watched the first episode of Rebels,
Yep,
it's like, dude,
Aladdin's
they got an
face.
Aladdin stand in. Because I remember we kept going street rat and all this stuff every time he would come on,
Right. Yeah, he's
wondering where
running.
Kanan's parrot was, that kind of thing or whatever.
But yeah, I mean, it was very emotional, and that watching Hunter and the embracing, and they were saying like, man, we would have crossed the galaxy to twice looking for you, and just like, and then there's the moment where Crosshair comes down the ramp, and then there's just it's like that stare down, the Mexican standoff, and you're just kind of like,
Well,
ooh,
because she set it
how?
up too, right? She
Yeah, because
was
he's
like, well, I wouldn't have gotten away unless I had help. And then it was almost like that scene totally reminded me of the Obi-Wan reveal at the end of episode 3 when he's standing on the ramp and Anakin sees him.
yep.
It was kind of that same vibe,
Yeah, and it's one of those things where like, well, where were you? How did you get away? And it's like, well, yeah, I wouldn't have gotten away if I didn't have some help. And then they're like, Crosshair. And so I think it's kind of touching in a way, and kind of I don't know, like everything kind of coming in full circle in a way, because they're just getting over the loss, or they're still trying to deal with the loss of tech.
Yeah,
And Crosshair doesn't even know that tech is gone yet, I don't
that's
think.
true. I don't think so. No, I think you're right.
So the fact that like, okay, it's like they lost a brother, but at this point, it almost seems like they're gaining one back. So I think that's kind of cool.
Well,
But
technically, I mean, they didn't really lose him, but they lost him as an active part of the team, and that's Echo. So if
oh
you think
yeah,
about it, they're really being, first they lose Crosshair to pretty much an ideological difference. Then they lose
yep.
Echo because Echo wants to go help the rebellion more and be more of an active participant there.
You're
Then
gonna help
Tech
Rex.
dies.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
that's one of the things that you particularly felt for all the people out there that, were commenting and saying, how could you call episode 2 filler and all this other stuff. I can understand from that standpoint. I said it was only half filler. I never said it was total filler. Just to make that clear. But I think that one of the things in episode 2 that really drove some things home was the fact that, they realize it's just like the two of us at this point because we don't have Omega yet. And
Hmm.
we were once like 5 people and now we're down to the two of us. And you felt a little bit of that desperation. And so that's, of course, rewarded here again. And that leads us into the whole, what do you really want to see next? And I mean, I
Hmm.
don't necessarily want to speak for you, but I mean, I got to imagine it's at least one of the things is roughly the same thing I do. I want to see the rest of this reunion.
Yeah, definitely. You got to hear the conversation. Like, okay,
Yeah.
what's up with you? Are you really? Have you finally ditched this whole thing, or are you still on the fence about certain stuff? Can we trust you? That sort of thing. And so, you definitely know that's going to be, going into the rest of the season, probably for the next couple of episodes.
Hmm.
We're probably going to see them kind of wrestling with that. But then now we have to find out, like, okay, I think they're going to find out. See, the thing is now the Bad Batch, they're going to have to find out why the Empire's hunting Omega so bad.
Mm.
and get at how to keep her safe, because it's like, all right, we don't know why they want her so bad, but now that once we find out why, then it's like, oh, because they're trying to use her to do some weird experiment or whatever. So now we really have to work hard to kind of keep her safe, because and now with him like having the full resources of the empire at his disposal, it's going to make it increasingly difficult for them to hide now and go places where, okay, it's almost kind of like uh was it Andor, when they were like, trying to go and hide in different, and like their names kept popping up. No, it was the Mandalorian. That's what it was. In Mandalorian, when they kept trying to hide, and like, okay, everybody's little pod thing, the little communicator thing was like, oh no, we're searching for this person. There's a bounty on this person, dead or alive type thing. And so now it makes it increasingly difficult to hide, because you basically have the whole government looking for you, essentially. And they're putting this APB out to the masses. And it's like, oh, there's a reward if you can find this little girl, and you contact us. Now it's even more difficult, because now when they're trying to go to these different places and planets, where are they going to go now?
She's like on the back of blue milk cartons.
Exactly.
Well, and to that point, though, it's actually it's interesting in the sense of you always wonder to yourself, like, how on earth could somebody, find somebody in this vast galaxy, right? Like, you would
Mhm.
think that the advantage would really be with Crosshair and Omega.
Mhm.
However, you bring up a really good point, is the fact that you have to really think about, even if you just think about this planet, about how people could easily track you no matter where in the world you go, because there's just all these resources. You can track credit card transactions. You can, there's just like all these different ways that law enforcement, even if you leave the
Mhm.
country, can still, if not pinpoint your exact location, they could honestly at least get the general area. Now you
Mhm.
take that on a galaxy-wide scale, because you look at what they're using, and yeah, you could very easily see, like you said, when you have the government essentially hunting you down, it's going to be increasingly difficult. And they did do that to a degree on Andor as well, because remember, Andor
Yeah.
was in their system and they were hunting him all over the place.
Yeah.
So,
I mean,
it's a similar
even in
thing.
this yeah, even in this episode, Crosshair's like, look, we gotta ditch this ship because it's an Imperial ship. So they have tracking devices on all their ships. So we gotta ditch this stupid thing and get the heck out of here. And so of course, that's why this whole reunion thing is like, okay, well, are they gonna be able to get off this planet in time before the Empire shows up?
Right. I wonder if they're going to go back to. Did you ever remember the name of the planet that they went to? That nice, peaceful little planet with the big lake or
No.
whatever it was.
The big ocean. Yeah. No,
Yeah,
I
where
was thinking,
Omega's
and that's
like
what I was thinking.
sailing and all that stuff.
Yeah, I was thinking like that's where they really need to probably get back to, but
That's
because
exactly.
I think it's kind of very much out of the way from most of the planets, and those people kind of love the Bad Batch and Omega and all them anyway.
Hmm.
So they've already kind of made that contact over there. So I don't think any of those people would turn them in. But yeah, I don't recall the name of that planet.
Yeah,
But
I didn't
but in
catch
my
it.
head, that's what I'm thinking. That's where they need to go.
I'd like to go.
I know, right?
I know. I took a look at that. That planet actually reminds me a lot of Italy. I was watching.
It does. It
There was
does.
the Equalizer 3. You saw that, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, that whole little village he was staying in. It's
Yeah.
totally what that reminds me of.
Yeah, kind of like Naboo too. Naboo reminds you of Italy
There
as
was,
well.
yep, yep, yeah. Because actually, they shot that. They shot that in one of the Italian cities. I don't remember. That's a good question. I remember. I remember the whole behind the scenes thing before the movie was released about how they were showing a little bit of the city part, and of course, everybody was speculating. And then they mentioned several times where that was shot, and I can't remember. But of course, Naboo always reminded me of Teletubby Land. Like once they
Well,
got
yeah.
out of the city.
Yeah, and they were just like in the field
Yeah,
area. Yeah.
right. Where they're about to have that little face off with the battle droids. I'm looking at it going, this is totally, if you put a picture of that next to the Teletubby land, I mean, it's identical. I'm just looking for the
Hey,
little baby
the
son
son
or
is like
whatever.
right. The son is like a baby. Exactly.
Exactly. I mean, hey, with Jar Jar, sillier things could have happened, I guess. But yeah, that's what I
True.
got the vibe from whatever this unnamed planet is. If anybody knows, nobody seems to be chatting tonight, but you guys are watching this, on demand, then put the name in the comments. Let us know what the name of that town or planet or whatever is, because I wouldn't mind knowing it, because I'd like to see more. And that's the thing. They're actually, particularly in this season, obviously we have Mount Tantus, which is huge. I mean, the
Hmm.
expanded universe had a whole thing on it. So that's nothing really new per se. I mean, it's being brought into canon for the first time, but this is the first time that we've ever seen that. And one of the things that I found really cool is the fact that even a lot of these other planets and things that they're introducing, uh, I really would like to see more of this stuff and see it pop up maybe in other books, and maybe explore the stuff a little more, because it's finally interesting locations. And for once, not everything is another desert planet or we're going back to Tatooine again.
Yeah, like it's got to be a snow planet or a water planet or a desert planet.
Right.
You
Where it's
know.
almost like climates or something. Now they're
Yeah.
they're starting to do it to where it has certain feels of different geographical locations. Not necessarily based on a certain element, like, oh, here's our volcanic planet and our swamp planet and that kind of thing. Although that's cool, but there's a little bit more diversity in these planets now. Because what all they were doing before, which again, I mean, it's a good concept. It's just, once again, this franchise is like, almost 50 years old at this point. You have to get out of the head of, hey, let's take, well, oh, there's swamps. Let's make a whole planet the swamp. Oh, there's like, you know, Antarctica or
Like
something.
scare
Yeah, let's
Scarecrow
make
is
the
like a
whole
giant
planet that.
jungle.
Right. Well, Scarif at least had the beach and all that other stuff.
Yeah, I
Um,
felt like you were like in Honduras or like
yeah,
uh
or Hawaii even.
Hawaii. Yeah.
But again, the jungle thing, same thing, right? Endor. Oh, you have a jungle? Let's make a whole jungle planet. I mean, that's just one of those things that they keep doing all the time, or at least they were doing before. So now I like the fact that we get some diversity in the geographic locations, and the planets aren't just like one thing necessarily. Then again, I mean, to be fair, we haven't really seen all of Dagobah either. I mean, we're just assuming that it's an entire swamp planet just based on what we know. And I just remember reading that in the whole encyclopedia of moons and planets, I think it was called. It was released back in the day. And
Hmm.
they would talk about, the entire population and, what the whole, basically, geographically speaking, like what was the climate of it, what was the topology, what was, all this other stuff. But now we're starting to see more interesting things. And what I would almost like to see, if they wanted to wrap up the series, is I would like to see the Bad Batch settle on that planet, much the same way Din ended up settling on. Oh man, I can't believe I forgot the name of it already. Where Grief Karga was the administrator.
Oh,
God, it's like it's like, what's wrong with me today? God. I mean, it's
oh,
only a city that they visited
you,
all the time.
you talking about you talking about the because remember they kind of bombed the original one, but you're talking about the next place they kind of annexed as um
Yeah, where they left off
uh,
basically in season 3, and
Navarro.
then Navarro. Thank you. I should remember that because of Dave Navarro, the guitarist. But yeah, much the way that Din settled there, I would actually like to see the season wrap up, because that would explain very neatly why we didn't see the Bad Batch beyond the original trilogy, right? Because you'd think you'd want to employ those guys in the rebellion. So it would be very easy if they just, hey, at the end of, this whole thing, whatever's going on, because we know that this is going to brush up against that time period, just have them like, you know what? You guys are rejected anyway. Settle and enjoy life. Kind of like a retirement planet. It's a big Florida.
And we were trying to figure out, it's called Pabu.
Pabu. All right.
Yeah, that's where they were trying to settle down. Because that's where was her name Phoebe, one that was played by Wanda Sykes character.
Yes.
That's the one who told them about, like, hey, you guys can kind of run away here.
Yep.
And that's where they kind of fell in love with the place and like, yo, this is pretty all right.
Yep, and helped them through that weird, like, typhoon or whatever. I mean,
yeah,
or tsunami. But that's the kind of thing that I would like to see. But I'm glad, again, that they're starting to show us a little bit more diverse planets. So that's pretty nice. So, I mean, I wouldn't mind seeing them maybe go there. At the end of the season, I'd like to see them go there permanently. But, I mean, I would like to see them maybe go there to just, gather their thoughts and be able to have a quiet conversation with Crosshair. See a lot of this reunion stuff. That's primarily what I think I really want to see out of the next episode.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely would love to see the conversation between the two of them. Whether I don't even say the two of them, but now that you have Omega back, it's now the three of them. Just they're kind of getting to the root of Crosshair and where he is mentally, emotionally. To see if they, talk about Tech, like, hey man, Tech's gone, and to see how that affects Crosshair, if it does at all. And then where are they gonna form up, and then are they gonna make one last stand to kind of protect Omega in this? So that's kind of where I'm kind of going with it.
Yeah, that's basically what it comes down to. So that's wrapping up our review. So you guys let us know what you're thinking. First of all, what did you think of this episode? What was your favorite scene? What were things that you liked, didn't like? Definitely put that in the comments section. And then for the next episode, let us know maybe what you'd like to see out of that. Because, again, we like to keep the conversation going. And to that end, you can hit us up on social media at HeadToHeadSW on Facebook, on X, formerly Twitter, on Instagram. We're on all three of those. And, of course, we even have a Facebook group, Head to Head, a Star Wars community, so you guys can join that. We can keep the conversation going. And, we'll be back live tomorrow. Because this was supposed to be our Friday show. But obviously we didn't get a chance to do it. So tomorrow we're going to concoct something. I'm not really sure yet. We didn't decide what it was, did we? I did, yeah. Or did I send some? What did I send? I sent something today.
The whole the whole Luke thing.
Yeah, what was it? I just sent it today. I don't even remember what it was. Let's see, I can access it. Nothing like producing on the fly, people.
Oh, the Dawn of the Jedi, what we know about the original.
Oh, yeah. The Dawn of the Jedi thing. That whole James Mangold thing. This is what do we know so far? And we can speculate a little bit of that. So be sure to check us out tomorrow night, 8 o'clock. Lord willing, we'll be live. And, obviously next Friday and thereafter, we'll be reviewing the Bad Batch until the season is over. Again, if something happens, just keep your eye on the community tab. We'll keep you guys updated as far as when we're going live and, if anything gets in the way. But our plan is to see you guys tomorrow. So with that, I'm Eric Vansel.
I'm Daryl Sanders.
May the Force be with you.
Always.
Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at HeadToHeadSW. Submit your questions for our next show. visit our official website at headtoheadswpodcast.com. Until next time, may the force be with you, always.